Good morning. I would like to thank you all for being here today and in our YouTube channel. Good morning. I'd like to thank you for being here today. And I'd like to tell you that this event is being broadcast through YouTube. And the Brazilian consulate, the Japanese consulate in São Paulo, together with Japan House São Paulo, has today an event to talk about the trade relations between Japan and Latin America in a troubled world market. First, I would like to give the floor to the General Counsel, Yorizumi Watanabe. Good morning, everyone. I am Yorizumi Watanabe, General Counsel of Japan in São Paulo. It's a great pleasure to have you here today for the event, the trade relations between Japan and Latin America in a troubled world market, organized together by the Japan General Consulate and the Japan House São Paulo. In the last decades, the world has been through important geopolitical transformations. It's a process that has intensified in recent years. Although the global community has developed important improvements, as in economical development, technological innovation, and human exchange, such progresses were not enough to hamper that some states could follow according to the threats and the use of the force, which puts in danger the foundations of the international order based on the solutions of disputes through dialogues, talks, which was built after the conflicts of the 20th century. In this context, although Latin America and Japan are geographically distant, we have a deep friend relationship, which is rooted in our human values that we share, and also our immigration history and the values of the rule of law and the economic relations that are beneficial for both of us. In the sense, I'm certain that the strengthening of our relationship can contribute not only to the progress of our societies, but also to developing a new international community that is more peaceful and stable. Thinking about this goal, we invited today Professor Yorizumi Watanabe, an emeritus professor of the University of Keio, who gently accepted the invitation to come to São Paulo to share with us his deep knowledge on the trade strategy of Japan and the economic relation between our country and Latin America. Professor Watanabe has a large academical and professional experience in partnership agreements and work as a chief negotiator in the economic partnership agreement between Japan and Mexico, and in the process of Russia in WTO. It will be very enriching to listen to his analysis according to the perspective of a partnership of Mercosur and Japan in the future. We also have here the prominent Professor Vera Thorstensen from Foundation Getúlio Vargas Economy School. She will speak about the expansion of the Chinese influence in Latin America and South America and its impacts to Japan and to Brazil. She's a professor at FGV, as mentioned, and she also a coordinator of the Center of Global Trade and Investment, and she's also chair of the WTO in Brazil and counselor of the Council on International Trade at FIESP. She has a large knowledge of global relations. I'm sure we'll have a very rich morning discussing such topics, and we work to deepen the relationships between countries in Latin America and Japan. So I would like to thank Professor Watanabe and Professor Vera for their presence, and I hope this is going to be a very productive event to all of you present here. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now I would like to ask for the Deputy President of Japan House to have the floor right now. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here at Japan House. For those of you who are here, and also those who are at home through YouTube, I would like to thank Professor Vera, Professor Watanabe, and the Council, and all of you that support us in this very hot Saturday. Hara-san and other presents too. Japan House São Paulo, it's an initiative of the Japanese government, which has as its goal to show the modern Japan, the 21st century Japan. We have Japan House in São Paulo, and we have also two other houses that were in Los Angeles and in England, and they were in London, sorry. It's a cultural center that has exhibitions, speeches, discussions, important events to show this country, which is so far geographically speaking, but also so close to us, as mentioned just before. Yearly, we have tens of thousands of visitors here, and we have two exhibitions right now, and you can visit them after the event today. We have Tanaka about Japanese miniatures by artist Tatsuya Tanaka, and Doshin about Japanese toys. Today, our event is going to be broadcast in English, but it's going to have translation into Portuguese. So you can have simultaneous translation in order to enjoy fully the event. So I'd like to thank you for being here today. I would like to wish you a good event. And it's such an important topic, so it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you. So now we're going to start I would like to invite the speakers of today, Professor Yorizumi Watanabe and Professor Vera Thorstensen.
Well, thank you very much, and also my thanks go to our dear General Consul and also Mr. Carlos Bosa, the Vice President of this institute, for inviting me here to talk about Japanese commercial strategies and also our relations with Mercosur countries, in particular Brazil. It's been a great pleasure for me to be here. Previously, before the COVID-19, I was here in March 2020, and I also talked about the development of Japan, Mercosur, Japan, Brazil economic relations. But since then, we have COVID-19 and also the war in Ukraine. So we have tremendous sort of turmoil. And also, kind of zigzag development of world trade affairs. So I think we have a lot of things to share with you, and particularly share with Professor Vera. She's here, and she's such an expert on trade issues. So I'm more than delighted to be engaged in the discussions in the subsequent stage. I'd like to show the slide, PowerPoint slide. Oh yes, here it is. So this is a title, Japan's trade strategy in the troubled world market, Japan-Latin America relations, and how we could enhance Japan-Mercosur economic partnership furthermore. So this is today's menu du jour, and let me explain some major problems that we are encountered, and then how we could get out of that. And Japan's particular device instrument is economic partnership agreement that we have developed in the last 2 decades. After the 21st century has opened. And also I'd like to show you the further development in the Asia Pacific so that Brazil and the Mercosur countries will come and more closely linked to the development of East Asia and the Asia Pacific. So the first introduction, the major uncertainties, the sources of uncertainties, that was the started in 2016. You remember this 2 top pages of Financial Times. This one is here, the Brexit, the national referendum, where the very tiny difference between those who support EU, the UK's departure from the EU and remaining in the EU. And unfortunately, to us, to Japanese business community in particular, the British has decided to leave European Union. And the other source of the uncertainty is certainly Mr. Trump's victory in the 2016 presidential election. And he deployed a number of protectionistic sort of policies. And first instance of his concrete realization of his protectionism was the withdrawal of the United States from the TPP, which many people actually regretted, including certain, late John McCain, the very veteran Republican senator, and he characterized the departure of the U.S. from the TPP as a serious mistake. And why the Brexit matters to Japan? This is a kind of sketchy summary of Japanese presence in the UK. Since the UK used to be a part of the European Union, so those products made in UK by Japanese companies like Toyota, Sony, Nissan, Canon, and all others could be treated as a product within the European Union, so that they could escape the imposition of duty while entering into European market. And the duty on cars are 10% in Europe, in the European Union. So it was quite significant that many Japanese companies wanted to establish themselves in the UK and manufacture the things and to be exported to the mainland Europe, I mean the European Union countries, without being imposed import duties. So that was quite a happy situation, but the Brexit put all those Japanese companies into the darkness of uncertainties. And this is also kind of map to show you how many Japanese companies, particularly in the automotive sectors, deployed in the European Union. And I'd like to stress that the employment at that time was beyond 146,000, almost 150,000 people, just across the European Union countries. So the Japanese investment all over in Europe was very important, but particularly in the UK, that was quite significant. This is the JETRO's idea of GVC, disrupted trade, shown by GSCPI, the abbreviation of Global Supply Chain Pressure Index. And this was used by JETRO, and since Mr. Hara is here, so if you have any further questions, you could ask the question to Mr. Hara. But as you see that this is a kind of ups and downs of the uncertainties or disruption of trade because of those things, even prior to the Russia's invasion into Ukraine. So I think this phenomenal disruption even go higher than it is indicated here. So the trade concern in the post-COVID-19 era, we have maybe 3 points: economic security, carbon neutrality, and finally human rights and labor, and maybe the labor standard issues involving human rights issues, and those are the concerns for the all the economic organizations. Particularly, this issue of semiconductor is very, very phenomenal because United States have they have this entity list and 152 firms listed in relation to Huawei, and denied person list, unverified list by export control regulations. So this is the kind of symptoms to create the situation what we call the decoupling all over, decoupling of the production chain that has been gradually spreading around in the world. So those are the three issues. And I found an interesting article in the Japanese Nikkei, and the semiconductors being characterized as the main battlefield. between the West and its counterpart. And the number of new factories which has been established compared to those in 2022 to 2024. In China, 25 to 13, so some bit decline. Taiwan is also decline. USA is increased. Japan has been also increased. Japan heavily invested in the semiconductor in conjunction with their cooperation with Taiwanese semiconductor company, and they started making factories in Kyushu in the Kumamoto prefecture, as well as in Hokkaido. EU plus Middle East is also doubled its number of new factories being under constructions. Republic of Korea has also doubled from 2 to 4. ASEAN is 7 times from 1 to 7. So production capacity increasingly enhanced in US, Japan, and the EU. So that is to counter this movement of economic decoupling. And during this Hiroshima summit of G7, they noticed this problem, and they launched the idea of de-risking rather than decoupling in order to mitigate the negative impact of such fragmentations of industries. The second point is that I would like to share with you is the serious effect of, rather negative effect of interventionism by countries. Subsidies has been and should be regulated by WTO subsidies code, subsidies agreement within WTO. But being faced with decoupling or de-risking situation, many countries put enormous money to help these semiconductors and related area. As you see here, in the case of Japan, it's 26.6%. You know, in the amount of $13.6 billion. United States has larger than that, 39 billion US dollars. European Union, another giant, 46.7 billion. China is champion here, 68.3 billion US dollars. So there's a competition of interventionism, which should be under control by WTO subsidies agreement. But unfortunately, you know, people seem to have kind of just set aside those disciplines that they have previously agreed in the previous GATT rounds, like Uruguay round, and the disciplines under WTO subsidies agreement. The third issue is export control and import ban. As I said in the G7 summit, they pick up the word de-risking instead of decoupling. But I think the essence of ramifications remain unchanged. And this is really the problem. And there is a kind of confrontation between Japan, United States, and the Netherlands on one side, and China on the other. And particularly the semiconductor producing machineries have been targeted in the Western countries to limit their supply to other side, that is China. So there is a very severe sort of confrontation or confrontational relationship between the West, namely United States, Japan, and the Netherlands on one hand, and China on the other. And technologies and also the materials, sometimes what we call the rare metals, those scarce resource has been hampered by the import restrictions or export controls. So this also affects the entire world trade, and this will result in the problems in the market, negatively affecting the developing countries. So those global economy facing fragmentation, what kind of cost we have? Scenario one, when each side imposes additional non-tariff barriers equivalent to the tariff increase during the US-China trade war that was taking place in 2018 to 19, the impact of GDP in 2030 in the future would be minus 2.3%, roughly 2.7 trillion US dollars in value. This is according to METI's report of this year. Likewise, scenario two, it's even severe when the additional non-tariff barriers are equivalent to 100% tariffs. The impact would be 7.9%, minus 7.9%. It's in the value term, roughly 8.7 trillion US dollars. So the process of decoupling or de-risking, whatever you name it, is a big domestic risk. It's a big downside risk to the growth of the world economy. So de-risking in the place of decoupling is a big question. Can Europe go green without China? This is also a question tabled by Financial Times very recently. The fact is that China dominates global rare earth production. China mines 70% of rare earth concentrates. China processes 87% and refines 90%. So its impact is enormous. Rare earth metals are used in permanent magnets, 94% of which are made in China. And permanent magnets, what are they? Is a key component in wind turbines and EV, electric vehicles motors. So the EU makes 58% of windmills and 23% of electric vehicles. So EU is very heavily dependent on the China's supply of those materials and components. The EU is increasing demand for rare earths is causing problems for policy makers. So they are kind of sandwiched by their target for the climate targets at the cost of political autonomy. Recently, as you know, Italy, one EU member country, is only one EU member country who has participated in the Belt and Road Initiative of China, but Italy seemingly declined from participation in the Belt and Road Initiatives. It's a big sign. And when you go back to the April the 1st, 2018, Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the UK then, she didn't sign on the memorandum on the Belt and Road Initiative while she was visiting Beijing. So there was a bit of change in the course of EU's attitude or West European countries' attitude toward China because of the concerns like this. So EU's response, they have already put those regulations already in place, like enforcement regulation for trade disputes, international procurement instrument, so to put the foreign countries outside of the EU for scrutiny, foreign subsidies regulations that was also enforced in January 2023, and very recently, anti-coercion instrument. They have put in place, in force in August 2023. So the EU has announced unilateral instruments, and it's unilateral, so that's also caused some problems in the WTO. The EU has announced unilateral instruments that can counteract economic coercion or market distorting measures against the EU and its member states. So under these circumstances and negative development of worldwide open trade regime, how Japan has been resisting to this tendency. And there I'd like to show you the basic structure of Japanese economic partnership agreement. And the Japanese economic partnership agreement, that was kicked off by Plaza Accord. And the Plaza Accord was a major exchange rate realignment, making Japanese yen stronger and US dollars and other European currencies weaker in Japanese yen's uprise. So that was to mitigate Japan's economic, the trade surplus and current account surplus of Japan. Japan has been at that time taking advantage of world market, and there was enormous pressure on Japan to review this exchange rate. So Plaza Accord was largely to give higher value for Japanese yen against the US dollars and other Western major currencies. So Japanese companies decided to move their factories of parts and components in the electric appliances, electronics, as well as the automotive industries. So they made a lot of investment in neighboring ASEAN countries like Thailand here, Malaysia, and Philippines, Indonesia, and other countries around Japan. And the parts and component companies, they started their local productions of those respective parts and components abroad in order to mitigate the negative impact of much appreciated Japanese yen. While they keep the highly sophisticated and value-added engine parts and components in Japan, so they export their parts and components to those countries in the neighboring ASEAN countries and East Asian countries. And the very important center of this supply chain was Thailand. So many, the parts and components being exported from their ASEAN countries, ASEAN partners to Thailand, and in Thailand, they made assemblies of cars, and those cars, the engine parts have been and other sophisticated parts and components also supplied from Japan. So that was what I would call de facto business-driven integration. And in order to facilitate this de facto business-driven integration, Japanese companies asked the Japanese government to start negotiation of free trade agreement with those countries because their duties have been a little bit high. So with FTA, free trade agreement, those duties on parts and components would be lowered. So that was the motivation for Japanese companies to stimulate the free trade agreement with neighboring countries. Particularly, it started with ASEAN countries. So that was the market integration in the beginning of market integration in Asia Pacific. So the Plaza Accord, as I said, it was ignition key and de facto business-driven integration through foreign direct investment, establishing supply chain and production networks in the region. And FTA EPAs have been considered to consolidate the merits of de facto integration. So from de facto integration to de jure integration, and by that I mean de jure, it's FTA agreements. In Japan, we call that economic partnership agreement. And this bilateral FTA EPA is gradually developed in a larger, more comprehensive EPA within the region, like Japan-ASEAN Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and even go beyond the region of East Asia. And the typical example is TPP. After U.S. departure, Japan made enormous effort to keep this TPP 11 after U.S. departure, to keep momentum of trade liberalization in the aftermath of U.S. withdrawal from TPP under Mr. Trump's administration. So this is a list of Japan's EPAs, started from Singapore and Mexico. Several Latin American countries are listed, Mexico, Chile, and we have also Peru, and we have also negotiated with Colombia. So altogether, some 21 EPAs with 24 countries. Maybe the most significant one being here, emphasized with larger letters here, the Japan-EU EPA. That is covering more than 1/3 of all trade. So Japan-EU EPA is quite comprehensive and progressive in nature and substantial. And since Japan and the EU share the values like human rights, the rule of law, democracy, and the market principles, so this is a kind of very important cornerstone for Japan's world affairs, Japan's trade policy. We have also Japan-US trade agreement on goods. This is largely to just to cover up the negative sort of ramifications for United States after their departure from the TPP, just in order to safeguard what they have, what the US had got out of this negotiation of TPP. So you see, this is the sort of sketchy summary of Japan's EPA. The FTA, Free Trade Agreement, is certainly the core part, both market access in goods and market access in services. But also this FTA traditional component will be complemented by other elements such as government procurement and also the movement of natural persons, competition policy cooperations, business environment improvement, bilateral cooperation, and most importantly maybe investment. So it's very comprehensive in nature, and in extension of that kind of Japanese EPA policy, we have TPP. Japan joined TPP negotiation as of July 2013. And I want to stress the fact that Japan was the last country to join TPP. After 11 countries have already joined and discussed, negotiated, Japan took a bit of time because of the agricultural protectionism back in Japan. So that was the achievement made by late Prime Minister Abe in 2013. Finally, Japan decided to join the TPP negotiations as of July 2013. And agreement, had been concluded in October 15th, year 2015. So those are the very summarized sort of element of TPP. Tariff elimination is very close to 100%. Even for agriculture products, it's 97%. It's very high. New rules, most importantly, SOEs, state-owned enterprises, regulation on non-commercial assistance by government. And since a country like Vietnam and Singapore, Malaysia, they were already the members discussing this. But in the minds of TPP negotiators, they had China in their mind. So, Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam, those are kind of dummies try to think about the future participation of China. So SOE regulation is quite strict, and it could be very high hurdle for a country like China to join the TPP. So let me move on to the next one. Now, U.S. withdrawal from the TPP, and China take advantage of U.S. withdrawal from rule-making in trade and investment across Asia Pacific, and aggressive use of anti-dumping measures, state interventions, state subsidies, and also they lost incentives to enhance further FTAs. Because FTAs, if it has a high standard, it requires the structural change in the domestic economies. So, Japan experienced that too. I mean, when we are engaged in the series of FTA, EPA negotiations, Japan was obliged to change its structure, particularly agriculture, for instance. That was one case. And regulatory coherence has been very much pushed forward by TPP negotiation, as well as Japan-EU EPA negotiations. So, after U.S. departure, China has lost appetite to do that kind of domestic change or restructuring in domestic economic structure. So now we see a very sort of hardcore, hawkish Chinese attitude in trade, and some economic that result in economic coercions. So now, how Japan, react and deal with those uncertainties? I think the proactive approach towards more integrated open market across Asia Pacific and beyond, that is the possible solution for Japan to seek furthermore. So the TPP 12 has been replaced by TPP 11. And TPP 11 has been promoted by Japan even after the US departure. And those 20 provisions, mainly in the area of intellectual properties, being suspended because those are US items. No substantial change in the market access deals in the original TPP. Agreement in substance reached in January 2018 and came into force by the end of 2018. Japan-US trade talks I have already explained, so let me just skip on this. We had this joint statement by President of US, Mr. Trump, and late Prime Minister of Japan, that we had this bilateral agreement. between Japan and the US. And this is also to show you the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which contains the 10 of ASEAN countries here, and plus Japan, China, Korea, plus we have Australia and New Zealand. Yeah, you see. It has a significant meaning for Japan because it's the first time for Japan to have FTA relations with China and also Korea. With those two countries, we haven't done any bilateral negotiations. So within the wider spectrum of RCEP, we had finally had bilateral FTA, EPA within the framework of RCEP. RCEP is very important because it tries to simplify the rules, and that gives more enhancement in the the production chain, value chain of Asia Pacific. And here, some examples: the Japanese car producers, they based in Thailand and import engines and transmissions from Japan and assemble in Thailand and export to Australia, and some part export back, shift back to Japan. Example 3 here, the Japanese elevator manufacturers based in Thailand imports hoists from China, manufactures elevator in Thailand and exports them to India. So this RCEP has been contributing to further enhancement of this kind of market structure and production chains. So here I put new between PRC in Japan, PRC, ROK. This is a new development where you see the circles or double circles. We have already bilateral EPA. So in Asia Pacific, thanks to RCEP, we have quite a bit of free trade or freer trade arrangement across the region of East Asia. Okay, this is to show you how it will develop furthermore and how you can make the best use of the framework such as RCEP and TPP 11. Japan actually member too, both RCEP and TPP. So Japan could play a pivotal role. In RCEP, we have Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, those countries who are kind of lagging behind, even within ASEAN. Those countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, plus Vietnam maybe, they will develop their trade regime in accordance with what they have agreed in RCEP. And TPP is more advanced. It is more deep and perhaps it's more strict in the rules to be disciplined within the framework. So in this way, Japan can play the pivotal role in both RCEP and TPP. And RCEP can be defined as a kind of a minor league in baseball. You have minor league and major league. So RCEP could be minor league, where the countries like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar could train themselves and be used to the higher level of disciplines and more liberal trade. Once they are ready, they can try the major league, that is TPP. So altogether, we are going to merge into free trade area of Asia Pacific at the end here. This is the issue that we discussed at the APEC. APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, started in 1989, and they have been discussing this freer trade across Asia Pacific. And both RCEP and TPP would be the avenues to bring countries, economies of APEC into freer trade Asia Pacific. Right, and so this is how we could design our EPA strategy in the coming future. So all these I could characterize as multilateralization of regionalism. Number one, convergence of liberalization efforts in 3 mega FTAs, TPP 11, Japan-EU EPA, and RCEP. Second point, a new momentum to reinforce the trade multilateralism embodied in the WTO. So we used to have the GATT WTO round negotiations, like Uruguay round negotiations, and then the agreements that has been implemented from top to down. But this is quite the opposite way. We have the FTAs, EPAs, and will pile up. So it's from bottom to top, and making the critical mass after gathering the like-minded countries. And we have already quite a significant number of like-minded countries, thanks to those mega FTAs and bilateral EPAs. So try to organize all those like-minded countries to create critical mass to support the trade multilateralism embodied in the WTO. So in that sense, Japan and Mercosur countries is very important. And in terms of our Japan's EPA policy, the Mercosur countries is one of the few remaining target areas. And we should like to bring Mercosur countries more fully integrated into the dynamism of East Asia or Asia Pacific economic integrations. And together with Mercosur, we could work to reinforce the WTO system. So Mercosur countries constitute the last remaining piece of jigsaw puzzle. This is the way that I put it. And Brazil is the most important component of Mercosur. So we have the high priority in making this kind of, the closer economic ties with Brazil for obvious reasons. So this is the final sort of sketchy summary here. The world economy could be tripod. One is Europe, centered around EU, and you have America's NAFTA, but now NAFTA is replaced by USMCA, United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement. You have southern part of Americas. We have Mercosur and Alianza del Pacifico. Alianza del Pacifico, they have all bilateral EPA with Japan. So now we have East Asia, we have RCEP. So the EU, USMCA, Mercosur, and RCEP, we have kind of platform to proceed into more open and transparent trade system set up in the WTO. We have TPP across Asia and Americas. We have Japan-EU EPA. So altogether, we can try to keep momentum to reinforce the WTO. WTO has all the problems, particularly in the dispute settlement, as appellate body functions has stopped for quite some time. But still, the many countries, at least on the level of panel discussions, they use this WTO dispute settlement. And European Union has proposed the kind of interim arrangement. So Japan has also joined, and hopefully those, the bottom-up approach that I mentioned
using the critical mass, gathering the like-minded countries through bilateral EPAs and multilateral EPAs to keep WTO alive. You see, that's very important. So this is concluding remarks. TPP 12, that was a template for 21st century type. And the TPP 11 to keep momentum for freer trade in Asia Pacific. RCEP and possibly JCK, Japan, China, Korea FTA for updating the production network in East Asia. Japan EU EPA, the major inter-regional mega FTA connecting East Asia and with the EU via Japan. Japan Mercosur EPA to be further explored as a subsequent project agenda, and joint study group, this is very important. The tripartite joint study group composed of the industries, government, and academia. Then they try to make assessment on the positive side, negative side, and there was a good kind of preparatory process, and hopefully this will be soon launched by the governments involved in the Mercosur countries. So those things together, all together, to maintain and strengthen trade multilateralism embodied in the WTO, and thus to enhance predictability in the international business. So in that sense, Japan-Mercosur is a key element in order to overcome the pessimism overwhelming in the world about the trade. So this is a very important juncture that Japan and Mercosur countries, particularly Brazil, get together and work for that. So thank you very much for your listening, and free trade for a better future. That is the end of my expose. Sorry for having kept you waiting, Vera Sensei. Okay, thank you very much.
It's over. Well, Professor, first of all, let me thank the invitation from the consulate and the Japan House. It's a pleasure to be here. Professor, it was a pleasure to meet you, to know you. I think I'm not going to make a full presentation. I think we're almost in the time of lunch. What I'm going to do is to put some points, and then if I have you can show me my presentation. I'm going to choose some numbers only. The first point is to react a little bit more to the professor on the geoeconomics point. Look, it's fantastic that we met in Geneva, right? Many years ago, so you are around Geneva. My point, I'm not so optimistic like Professor. I'm a little bit more pessimistic, right? I think that we are living in a world, very complex world, where geopolitics, the fight of big powers, and I'm seeing talk about the United States and China and Russia now. They are, if not destroying, but literally to really influence not only the politics, but more than this, the macroeconomics and trade. And you can say also that the law, international law. So this new configuration of geoeconomics is changing the rules-based system, Professor, that we live in, you and me, right? I fully agree with what you said in the first part, and I'd like to add two more elements. That's interesting to see that this is not the main point for Japan, but it is for Brazil. In this new geoeconomic world, for Brazil, there's one point that is important: environment. For us, environment is being now the main barrier to trade. It's amazing how European Union, a little bit less United States, but the other countries are transforming environment in a big protectionist issue. In my mind, you have the other point, environment, and also what we call technical barriers. That is the way you build your product, or phytosanitary barriers, the way you produce your meat. And these are, there's rules on this for TBT and SPS, but not for environment. And so the countries are using this kind of barriers to impose a huge restriction to trade. So, Professor, I would add in your geopolitics presentation, environment. And for Brazil, there's a huge point of interest, that is to see how the world and Japan, you react to the European Union barriers. That is the famous tariff on the border because of the level of carbon you produce in the famous CBAM, right? And Japan is on the target. I saw the name of, for instance, the export of steel, about the amount of carbon. And you have to buy license to export. And so this is as a point of concern to Japan. And in the case of Brazil, deforestation. Our internal law allows the big producers of agriculture to reforest their land, and in the law of the European Union, you cannot do this. This is a very complicated issue. Environment is a big point. I'm curious because Professor, for Japan, that's not important. The second point that I would like to add, and what I want to do is exactly to react to Professor's speech, is the digital regulation. I just arrived from Santiago, big conference on OECD on digital conference. And Professor, it's so interesting to see that you have 3 models for the digital world, right? The first is the model of the US, free for all, do what you want. The big firms dominate the world and the politics of the US and even the politics around the world. They do what they want. The second model is the European model. This is really a huge compromise with the individual to protect what's going on, the identity of the individual, its own information. So you have you don't have the big enterprise in the European Union, but you have a huge amount of regulation, data protection, and all this. And the third model is the China's model. That is the full control of state on the individual. It's a completely different model. And so for OECD, things are really becoming complicated in the digital world. How will be the model of the future, right? And the model of Brazil. And how this will affect Japan. Because Professor talked a lot about goods, really important. But in the area of service dominating is growing more rapidly than goods, the export and imports. And you are not talking about service, that tourism and the financial world as we know it. But it's more important about data flow. Who is going to dominate the data flows? And I was astonished to listen to how you use small robots to pick up the information of everything you use. And the amount of trade driven by platforms. You know, a platform is, if you dominate a platform, you are going to start dominating the trades. So it's amazing. Everybody uses Mercado Livre and all the platform. I don't know in Japan they would. So who is doing the regulation for these platforms, right? So these are the 2 points that I'd like to add to your very, very good geo-economic vision. And let's go to talk a little bit of Brazil and Latin America, and then to put the things together. As you know, Brazil has a new government with a new attitude toward the world. And the main phrase of Brazil now internationally, Brazil is back. That I think is really important to say this. And, anyway, what is interesting about the word is what we call the neo-industrial policy, right, Professor? We live in a world to liberalize, and our word was of liberalization. Now, forget about this. I love your phrase when you said, this is not the word anymore, the real word anymore. And as I say, these rules are being destroyed by the geo-economic rivalry. And if you go up in my word, it was forbidden to talk about industrial policy, but now industrial policy is back. What's the meaning of it? So the old instrument, Professor, tariff. Come on, tariff, that is what you pay to get into another country, is the important barrier again. So try to convince entrepreneurs to cut barriers, tariff, Professor. They are not going to allow. The lobby is huge. So this is a new word. So I fully agree with what Japan is doing, that is to negotiate agreements. I don't think that should be the reality of Brazil, right? It's a new reality. So the second point, tariffs first. Second, subsidies. The word, you have not only a war of ships, that is, who is going to produce the ships, but you are living a kind of world of war on subsidies. And sorry, Brazil, the pocket of the money, the government is not so big. So for Brazil, tariff is an important way to protect. I do not agree, but this is the reality, right? The third point that I said to you is about the standards, this war on standards, and I think this is becoming complicated. Because when you build a car, you build anything electronic, you have to, the first mobile I had, Professor, in Europe in the 90s, I have to buy a new cellular mobile in the United States and another one in Europe. It's fantastic, they do not talk. So this is standards. And now this is being used to cut the globalization process of the world. So in this new world, forget about globalization, value chains. You have to talk about regional and a more divided world. In case of Brazil, it's complicated. Do you know why? Because the models of standards of the US are not the models of the standards of the European Union. European Union use what I call the standards from the International Standardized Organization. And we made a big research, Professor, to discover what are the standards followed by Brazil, which kind of school, the model they follow. And what we discovered on South America. We discovered that Brazil uses its own standards. So because Brazil has a big market, so I know that for Japanese firms, automobiles and so on, they have to adapt to produce our sport to Brazil. Come on, this is tariff. This is a big barrier. It's a kind of hidden tariff, right? And then the funny thing is that we study Argentina. And Argentina follows more for 11 sectors that we did, Professor. Argentina follows the European model. That is more related to ISO and not the domestic. And we made for the Spanish countries. And guess, Professor, they are following US standardized models. That is completely different from the European ones. And the same problems happening in the environment, Professor. Really, if you go to how you measure the carbon emission of a ton of steel, of anything you produce, the model of the United States is not the model of the European Union. They are measured differently. So again, these are the new reality of trade. It's amazing. Germany starts a famous carbon club, and then everything starts discussing. And it's again, it's the old rivalry between US and European Union. In this world, they still are keeping the same. So for what is important for Brazil is the question is, what kind of model we are going to follow? The European Union, United States? Certainly not of China, right? But, and let me finish so we can discuss a little bit. Let's move to some politics of Brazil. So you ask me, okay, in this complex world, forget about globalization as such, what's the place of Brazil? I think that for regional arrangements, perhaps you are moving to an agreement with the European Union. I know it's quite clear that for this government, the priority is Latin America, South America. And so you are amazing. We have no tariffs among us in the Latin America countries, no tariff. But still, trade is not growing. Guess why? Because we are following different standardization models. The technical issue is huge. There's no WTO agreement to force us to discuss equivalence. For me, this is the rule, the word, convergence and equivalence. And so, priority of Brazil, South America, complicated but easy to do. I hope that because it's awful, because of this new reality of the world, Germany is losing a huge amount of trade that was toward Russia, and so Germany is interested in doing something with Latin America, right? But Germany has to fight with France. That is completely against because of the productivity of Brazil in agriculture. So let's see what's going to happen. You know about this. The Europe, led by France, they propose a new letter, a side letter, awful. Rediscussing an environment chapter, and Brazil contract with procurement, government procurement. That is a political important issue for the industry again. So let's see what's going to happen. I'm a little bit optimistic about this. And now I think that this will affect Japan. That is, if Brazil and the European Union, Mercosur and the European Union sign this agreement and this start to put in force, this will affect Japan. We made a lot of simulations. Why? Because what Europe is going to export to Brazil is exactly the same thing that Japan exports. The classification is the harmonized system at the famous 84 and 85. Machinery, all kinds of machinery, all kinds of electronic goods. It's the chunk of plastics and all the industrial products chemical products that Japan export. And so if you have the reduction tariff between the European Union and Brazil and Mercosur, this will affect Japan. So, and then if we have this agreement, you are going to have with EFTA countries, certainly. And there are and then will be a kind of queue. Canada, and okay, Singapore is almost done in the sense that an agreement with Singapore is more to be a logistic place, to be there in the core of the Asian countries. So it's not export and import sector to produce things, but to be there in terms of logistics and finance and so on. So I think that if you have this agreement, Japan will be more than affected by, because we are going to have another. And I know that in the queue, Korea is in the better place than in Japan. But for me, and I will finish with this, the main concern for Japan in Latin America is nothing what I said. It's China. If you go and think that's important for JETRO to pay attention on this, to follow what's going on the investment of China in South America, not only in the area of energy, in the area of critical minerals. And now the investments on automobiles. Professors spoke so much about automobiles. Pay attention. What's going on? What China is doing in Argentina and Brazil. That is a kind of aggregated production. And go to see the trade. So not only investment, and this is easy. You go to the marvelous research that China and Brazil what's the name? It's not the Council of Brazil, Entrepreneur Council of Brazil and China, to see the amount of investment. The investment in Brazil from Japan is going down. It's ridiculous. Almost $1 billion, now it's 200 millions. It's amazing. China is going up. And in the area of trade, this is amazing. If you put product by product, Professor, in 6-digit levels of imports from China, you are going to be really disturbed. What's going on? How they affect exactly the points of exports from Japan. And it's so important that China is taking out products from Brazil. Japanese investing in Brazil that export to other countries in South America being affected by China's imports. So the main problems of Japan in South America is China, right? I think I finished there, and then Professor can react to my points. Thank you. Are you sure? There's a lot of numbers, but forget about it. It's today's Saturday. Come on. You don't deserve this. Okay, thank you. Professor, up to you. Okay. Please. Your point, your reaction to my provocations.
I am a product of Jesuit education for more than 15 years. So Jesuit is very good at provocation and how to deal with provocation too. So you will see it.
Different views. But anyway, I agree with everything.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Seriously, Vera Sensei, for your very kind and positive account and also complimentary statement. I would like to say at the outset that this is a kind of dicta I learned from Coudenhove-Kalergi. You know, Coudenhove-Kalergi is a Count Coudenhove-Kalergi of Austria between the two great wars.
Yep.
And he published a book about pan-Europeanism. It's kind of essential, the European integration sort of enlightenment that he put in. And what he said at the front page of his book, it's written in German. It says, I think in English terms, pessimism in recognition or pessimism in understanding should be overwhelmed by the optimism of the will. This is good.
Yep.
I mean, without having this optimism of the will, we would be just simply crushed by pessimism of recognition. So what's going on in the international trade, I'd like to just remind to myself this kind of, the will of optimism of the will is really important. You said that the problem for Japan in Latin America is China. I don't see it in that way, because China represents not only risk or threat, but also it's an opportunity for us. And China is the natural market, if you like to put it, for Japan. So having good relations, commercial or cultural, political relations with China is really primordially important for Japan. So, China is not a problem anyway. I mean,
Here in Brazil?
Well,
Okay.
As you mentioned, yes, China's you know, the increasing promotion both in trade and investment is phenomenal.
Yep.
But well, it's good for China. It's good for
It's good
Brazil.
for Brazil, sure.
Yeah, sure. But I went to Africa, and there was an international airport in Botswana, and that was the product of investment of China. It's very new, but it's already you know, quite, you know, damaged because it was kind of cheaper, but they used the cement also cheap quality. So after only one couple of years after the completion of the construction, unfortunately, this international airport in Botswana has been declining in its quality. The very famous case of Fanbantota of that is Bangladesh. You know, their port facilities have been purchased by Chinese companies because 9.0% of interest rate of Chinese, you know, road and you know, BRI initiative. That was too high for that government, Bangladeshi government, to pay back. So the facilities have been completely confiscated by China. Same thing happened in the Port Piraeus in Athens, in Greece. You see the Piraeus port.
The port.
You know, so we will see. You see, as I said, Italian government has withdrew from BRI initiatives, but in Italy, the highways, you know, the expressways in Italy, more than 40% of the stake has been purchased by China. I mean, invested by China. So you will see, you see. So, well, it's up to Brazilian government, Brazilian people to decide. So anyway, China's presence here is good for China and good for Brazil. It's not the problem for Japan. Since we have China in East Asia as a partner for RCEP, and China has already declared its intention to get into TPP as well. And it's a good sign that, you know, within Chinese government, there are people who have progressive thinking that China should come out of the typical example of middle income country trap. You see, so in order to get out of this medium income trap, China needs new initiatives, and for progressive people inside China, it's TPP, not RCEP. RCEP is too easy for China, so that's why only 1 week after signing ceremony of RCEP, Xi Jinping himself declared that China is interested in getting into CPTPP. So the hardest sort of hurdle, difficulty for China to get into CPTPP is a state-owned enterprise. So it's up to them to change, because it's a take it or leave it situation for them.
Professor, how you react to this scenario, possible scenario of having Mr. Trump again on the U.S.? Because this again is a geoeconomic huge point. That is to have the president that is saying that U.S. can be out of NATO, can be out of you know, all the arrangements, and raise tariffs. And so, look, how do this the Japan react to this new word?
You know, there are so many unpredictable things happened during Mr. Trump era in the United States, and still it's early stage to pass any judgment and you know, the forecast so about the U.S. presidential election. So I would refrain from making any sort of
Not yet.
yeah, but you know, whatever U.S. administration will take place in Washington, D.C., I think that is Japan's policy to keep up with, you know, the keeping the international
law and international order, law and order, try to bring United States back into that kind of structure. And since Mr. Trump is so unpredictable, you could imagine that he will change his traditional approach. Maybe, somebody can persuade him that he is the only one to bring the change for better, in the WTO, for instance, you see. Because somebody could make a kind of temptation. If Mr. Trump wants to be like JFK, he can, remain his name as Trump Round.
Oh, yes,
You see? Yeah. So this is a kind of joke, but maybe, the withdrawal of United States from TPP was also a kind of joke. The departure of United Kingdom from EU was a kind of joke too.
That's
so
true.
what would
Amazing,
happen?
amazing.
We don't know yet. Anyway, coming back to your points of digital and tariffs, and also you mentioned about investment rules. It's precisely since we did not have the successful multilateral round to deal with these issues.
Yes,
That's why we have this kind of discrepancies, differences in the question of digital trade, for instance. But I think that you already aware of the APEC development. 2019, Mr. Abe was hosting the APEC summit meeting in Osaka, and in Osaka they made declaration about free flow of data with certain precautions on human rights and also rights of human element in the data flow, free data flow. So that kind of issues, you mentioned that you participated in Santiago de Chile for this kind of discussion by OECD. It is very important because OECD played a kind of anti-chamber role.
Yes,
when
we
we
know.
had the services
We know,
back in the Uruguay-Round negotiation.
Environment,
Yeah,
yes,
environment,
everything is there.
and labor standard, all kinds of things that we asked the OECD to
prepare, to study.
prepare. So it's a kind of anti-chamber before you bring all issues into the
So
WTO.
it's important to mention that I was in India in the think tank 20, as I told you, and Brazil will be the president of the G20. So important message for the Japanese industry here in Brazil is to work with the business 20, the B20, because CNI and Fiesp are involved in this. And if you go to the agenda of the B20, it's all related to investment and trade. So it's another point that Jethro can work a little bit on this to see. Come on, you have to work hard. You are the economist. And let me tell you, and I'll finish. I think that discovered I was in Geneva the other week on the forum of the trade forum. And the thing I love about we love to study standard. And we are talking about how standards on service. It's amazing. For me, service is to know the resistance of materials and something, but it's on service area. And now the main issue is look about, example, toys. Just buy a doll to a girl. You are worried about if the doll, the bottom of the skirt and so on, the collar, it's not, there's no material that gets into the mouth of the children. But now the most important thing in standards is about psychological standard and ethical standards, because the doll has a semiconductor that talks with your children. And what kind of interaction this toy you have with a girl and a boy, gender issues. It's amazing. They are discussing already all the implications of having, a microchip in all things, or in the frigo. It's amazing. You have to go and see who is going to assure you that your frigo is not asking to the supermarket only the brands that they are paying for the developer of the program? It's amazing, you know, where we are now in the sense of manipulation of persons through the service embedded in the chip, you know, the program embedded in the chip. So it's a new word, right? So, Professor, I think that we really, really enjoy your say, and I think that, come on, it's over isn't that 12? And I think it's people are eager to have lunch. Naomi, you are our...
Thank you. Obrigada. Gostaria de agradecer a apresentação e o...
I'd like to thank for the presentation and the discussion, and I'll have questions. If you have any question, please raise your hand and I'll take the mic.
My name is Thiago Megali. I work with Professor Vera at the Center for Global Trade and Investment. I'd like to thank you for the presentation, for the debate. And in my question, I would like to insert a new geoeconomic perspective, that is the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity that was launched last year in May by the United States. Exactly. And one key feature of this framework are the flexibilities. And so I'd like to ask, how could these flexibilities could be achieved, concretized after the negotiations period? And the main pillars of this framework are trade, supply chains, clean energy, decarbonization, and anti-corruption action. And so how these core issues could also be concretized? What can we expect from the negotiations? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for shedding light very correctly on the IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. That was, as you said, quite rightly proposed by Mr. Biden when he came to Japan in May last year. And certainly, you know, the Japan's attitude towards IPEF is quite positive, you know, because IPEF proposal was praised by Biden administration after the long absence of United States initiative across Asia Pacific. So whatever the content is, you know, the United States coming a step towards, you know, again committing in some way to making of international law and order in the Asia Pacific should be very appreciated. And you said that flexibility is also very important. But in the hindsight of flexibility, I would notice that kind of ambiguity there. Why? Because first of all, they talk about the resilience of supply chain. They also talk about, as you rightly put it, anti-corruption issue, all those things. But there are four components, you see, and one component is missing. That is trade. And actually, so far, there is no agreement on trade. Usually trade is very primordially important element that comes in the first place usually. But United States, wisely they put it trade at the very end of the row. You see, so why? Because in Washington D.C. or in the United States, trade is not a matter to deal with. You see, trade, particularly in the Washington D.C., trade is missing. So when you talk about freer trade, and then you will lose your seat in the Capitol Hill. So it's really anti-trade sort of atmosphere, and we should reminded that Biden administration takes advantage of what left behind by Mr. Trump. You see, all those, the additional high duties on steel and aluminum still in place. A lot of things that Trump administration introduced still remain intact, you see. So actually, in the hindsight of this flexibility, there's ambiguity what the United States want to do. Well, then what could be the merit of IPEF? Yes, IPEF, we could see the U.S. appetite for future trade negotiations, you see. So United States has been leading in the past, including Uruguay round, Tokyo round, and all that. United States playing a very important role. And this time, their hands are very much tight. Their hands are very much constrained because of this political pressure in Washington, D.C., particularly in the Capitol Hill. They cannot do anything about the trade. But at least they showed the list of their the issues that they are interested in, you see. So through talks, it's not really negotiations, but through talks with the United States within the framework of IPEF, we could detect what the United States what issues the United States will be interested in. So, in that sense, it is useful exercise. So we have CPTPP, RCEP, and IPEF to cover the entire region of Asia Pacific. Now, United States is kind of pulling back itself, but we will see what would happen, you see. So that's why Japan did not say the flatly no to IPEF, but we can go along with some discussions, preliminary talks, but waiting and telling United States that United States should come back to TPP so that we could make further, concrete steps forward to reinstitute the law and order in international trade and investment across Asia Pacific. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Watanabe and Professor Thorstensen, for your talk. I'm Claudia Yoshinaga. I'm Associate Professor of Finance at FGV Business School. I have a question for Professor Thorstensen, considering that doing business with Brazil, one of the unique characteristics is our tax law. And we are during the discussions of an important tax reform for Brazil. And what are your opinions on what will happen to trade with Brazil considering the passing of this reform?
Well, after 20 years, you can say that we are trying to do this. Look, this is really important. Why, Professor? When we start talking about that to the industry, good question. Please, you have to be integrated the world. The level of our tariff is huge. It's 12% the median. With automobiles is 35. Just to say how we are protected in Brazil. And you know, the entrepreneurs, they said, we cannot allow the tariffs go down because of the famous Brazilian costs. That is the cost of Brazil in labor law, in all the taxation and so on. And so this is a thing, Claudia, that I think is important. That is, it doesn't matter if Brazil is going to accede rapidly or not to the OECD. What is important is that the enterprise is saying, please, you have to do reforms to be integrated in the world. And this transfer price, you are in the finance area. Professor, we have a law, a special law in Brazil of transfer price that is between multinationals that is taking a lot of money out of the revenue. So it's amazing. The way Brazil deals with these things. And so to know what's going on with transfer price, competition, the law of Brazil is really very good. Brazil is already in the committee of antitrust in the OECD. No, so doing these things. Again, BEPS, the base enhanced profit shifting, the way the multinationals is not paying incomes and taxes. So we have to deal with this. In some way, all the area of finance, you'll be really, the law of interest rate, Claudia. It's amazing. The law of interest rate is more or less a modernization to liberalize capital in Brazil. Very, not a speedy way, but very controlled way by the central bank. But we are doing it. So in the cost of Brazil will be touched with these step-by-step reforms on the financial area. I fully agree with you. It is a huge problem for Brazil. Good. Professor, Naomi, time to have
Yes.
a little bit of refreshment.
Bom, devido ao tempo esgotado.
Due to our time, I apologize. We have to close now without any further questions. The professors will be here in the room if you have to have a talk with them. And I'd like to thank you for your presentation, for your discussion. And you can have your final word if it's appropriate. Professor, would you like to have a final word? Professor Vera?
Congratulate the Japan House and the consulate to this initiative. I think this is important that we talk. And it's so nice to see your perspective of the world, the confront of ideas. I fully agree it is important. I can tell you, Professor, I'm a realist. I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist, but I'm really worried about what's going on. I am a realist person.
Sorry. Vera Sensei, thank you very much for your very kind final statement. I also share your realism as well. But this is a very right time for us to work together. Yeah, and you mentioned about the importance of services. Japan pays a lot of attention to services. At the beginning of the Uruguay round negotiation in the Punta del Este, Japan was pushing forward those new issues such as services and intellectual property rights to be on the agenda. But Brazil, India, and Argentina, those countries are against. So if we were overwhelmed by Brazilian, Indian, Argentinian objections, we couldn't talk about even services now. But now we have services, we have intellectual properties. Maybe we are too successful. Because of that, the developing countries lost appetite for their participation in the forthcoming negotiations. But I think the important thing is, Brazil could be like-minded together with Japan to make those new rules that you mentioned about digital services, even discussing about tariffs and so forth. So, Japan is very much open to further proposal, and I hope that the economic partnership agreement between Japan and Mercosur would be realized within the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'd like to ask you all to fill the survey that we left on the chairs, so we can improve the quality of our events and to learn a little more about your opinion. I'd like to invite you all for a coffee break, and I would like to invite the professors for that too. Thank you.